because you are the people who are going to really make sure that our next generation that enters the universities, they are all AI savvy. So my name is Patvardhan, and I've been in DI for the last 31 years. Now a professor of electrical engineering, as was very kindly introduced by the organizers. So here's the context. We'll go through some preliminaries, and then we'll see the purpose of education and how things have been growing exponentially. What is the current status of AI in terms of recent use cases, whether it's hype or reality or a little of both? Because there have been statements made by very, very eminent people, wherein they've said that AI is, in terms of its super intelligence quest, is possibly the greatest quest mankind has ever made. Unfortunately, some people say it could also be our last, because if we create beings that are more intelligent than us, people are worried that they would take over the world and we would then become subservient to them, just as we've made more powerful animals than us, like gorillas, subservient to us today. So what is our take on all these? I'll be talking about all these. How much of it is hype, how much of it is reality, or maybe a little of both. Then we'll talk about trying to understand what is intelligence per se, so that then we see how we can use AI in education. I'll talk about some applications for which people have been utilizing artificial intelligence in education. So here is Skinner for you, and he says that the real problem is not whether machines think, but whether humans do. Are we moving in the right direction in terms of our progress? If we look at the progress made over the past few centuries, we have certainly progressed in lots of domains, but we've also created problems in several spheres of life and activity. Environment being only one of them, then other issues like not being able to serve the whole humanity, a large population being deprived of basic things like food, water, shelter. So are we really progressing in the right direction? So here is the slide that talks about how we have to move from data to information to intelligence to wisdom. And essentially, it's increasing understanding that leads us from one step to the other. So data and information is just lower order knowledge and skills. We acquire higher order knowledge and skills, and then we move to the side of wisdom. When we look at how education is done today, several times we are faced with the question as to whether AI will replace human teachers. So all of us, are we going to lose our jobs? But if we see what happens in the classrooms, the teacher has a very good perception. Okay, barring COVID, wherein we are now talking on Zoom and we're not able to see our audience. But in a regular class, the teacher has a very good perception as to whether a point needs to be repeated, whether it needs to be elaborated on, whether the students are getting the concept that is being explained, whether the examples that have been given have driven home the point or not. Do we need another example? Have we pointed out the exceptions? Has the connection with what we taught? Is the motivation for the lecture clear? All these ideas a good teacher would always convey in a class. But the problem is, even for a good teacher, all the above things are conveyed to a group, and individual differences are not taken care of because teachers are hard pressed for time. We also evaluate on a common platform, and we'll talk about what we are evaluating later. At the systemic level, yes, there are lots of things that things like credit-based system and so on, they are trying to address. But feedback and corrective steps during a particular course, they are largely missing. So what are the major goals of education? The major goals of education can be divided into easier tasks and the harder tasks. For example, acquisition and retention of knowledge and skills, understanding of one's acquired knowledge, active use of one's acquired knowledge and skills, these are all easier tasks, and our education system does a fairly good job of trying to address these issues. However, there are harder tasks in education, like training the students in soft skills, in life skills, social sensibilities, and spiritual values. Professor Nandita in her introduction talked about some of these that DI has a special system of education to address, but we do need that special system of education in a regular system wherein the contact is limited to lecturing and labs and examinations. These things are very hard to inculcate. But what we see today is that the society is changing very rapidly, and changes are much more rapid than ever before, exponentially faster actually. For example, if we consider the lifestyle changes of human beings in the periods as shown in the slide, from 0 AD to 1700 AD, we don't see much. There were changes, but not too much. With the Industrial Revolution, if you take a person from 1700 and put him in the 1950s in this planet Earth, the changes in the 250 years were far more than what we achieved in the previous 1700 years with the Industrial Revolution. The lifestyle changed a lot. Next 50 years, the Information Revolution brought about as many, if not more, changes than what 250 years of Industrial Revolution or the 1700 years before that brought about. And now, from 2000 to say today, Industrial Revolution, Intelligence Revolution, things are much, much more rapidly changing. So what we could expect is that, see, the time scales are shrinking so much that whatever changes we had in 1700 years or 250 years or 50 years or 20 years will now have in the next 5 years. So we need to adapt to that. When we see how we are performing our goals of education, so if, for example, goal number 1, acquisition and retention, much of our current educational system can be described as memorize, regurgitate, and forget. Students essentially learn to study for the test. So the retention part of goal 1 is not very well served by this approach to learning. The totality of accumulated knowledge is increasing exponentially, and what it means is that the student just cannot memorize the whole knowledge that is required in any particular domain. A similar analysis also holds for skills. Nobody has time to acquire skills in every domain. Converting various data into information and then knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom means the power of applying these attributes critically or practically to make decisions. This, being the second goal, also needs our attention. We want students also to be actively using their acquired knowledge and skills at home, at work, at play, and at school in varied settings. We want that the learning of the specific classroom should be transferred from the classroom environment to other environments, which needs and what has been learned. Now, with all these as the goals of education, let's now try to understand what is AI and how we can utilize AI for achieving these goals. So essentially, AI focuses on development of hardware and software systems that solve problems and accomplish tasks that, if accomplished by humans, would be considered as a display of intelligence. That's the regular formal definition of AI. There are several other definitions I'll be talking about. So we want to develop machines as robots, automatic pilots for airplanes and spaceships. Just yesterday, there was a news item wherein the AI has beaten the experts in combat flying. AI had beaten the world expert, the world champion in chess way back in '97, beaten the world champion in Go in 2016, beaten world champions in Jeopardy. IBM Watson did that in 2011. And now we can add one more to that growing list, wherein they had a competition of combat aircraft programs. And those programs then finally played against the human expert and managed to defeat that human expert 5-0. So when we use the term artificial intelligence, Europeans tend to use the term machine intelligence for that, but essentially it's the same. So when we talk about robotics and AI, our ideas in popular world are shaped by images like this, what Hollywood and Bollywood serve us. So all these are famous robots appearing in various Hollywood classics. But what students need to learn is this. AI, far from being the kind of glamorous things that I showed in the previous slide, is essentially mathematics and logic served in an application wherein the goal of creating that logic and that intelligence is different. However, it doesn't mean that this kind of formalism is not there. So when we talk about intelligence, so what is human intelligence? As opposed to artificial intelligence, we love to say that human intelligence is real intelligence. So we talk about abilities to learn, to pose problems, which includes recognizing problem situations and transforming them into more clearly defined problems and then solve them. So different individuals differ in their ability to understand complex tasks. Even for a single person, the intellectual performance will vary on different occasions in different domains as judged by different criteria. Concepts of intelligence are attempts to clarify and organize this complex set of phenomena. If we look at different cultures, industrialized North Americans tend to associate intelligence with speedy answers. Speedy answer does not necessarily mean the most brilliant answer. However, many of our intelligence tests actually test how fast we can solve a given set of problems correctly. So both are involved, correctness as well as speed. Rural members of the Baganda tribe in Uganda think of intelligence as slow, careful, active, straightforward, and sane. Some other tribes could talk about intelligence as an intelligent person as a person who exercises prudence and caution, especially in social interaction. Social responsibility, again, a very important part of intelligence in another tribe of Kenya. In our Eastern traditions, intelligence and wisdom are related to higher consciousness and ability to take a holistic outlook of things beyond mere materialistic pursuits. So our view of intelligence is very, very different. So Howard Gardner came up with the theory of multiple intelligences, and those include things like musical intelligence, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, spatial intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, linguistic intelligence, logical, mathematical intelligence, naturalists, and so on. So all these are different facets of intelligence, and they are non-commensurable. One could be very, very intelligent in one of these spheres and may not be so intelligent in another sphere. So here we have examples. Obviously, Shakespeare could write an excellent sonnet, but could never fight Bruce Lee, or could not do mathematics the way Einstein would do. In the center, I have put the photograph of our Honorable Prime Minister, and it's up to you to judge which of the multiple intelligences he has. So, when there are so varied forms of intelligence, and when we are saying that we are creating artificial intelligence, what is it that we are trying to create? Although the machine intelligence theory claims a biological basis for the kind of intelligence that they are creating, this does not suggest that intelligence is purely genetic or inherited. So we have theories of intelligence that talk about nature, which means that we're born with certain level of intelligence, and how and to what extent the intelligences manifest would also depend on nurture, how the environment, how much the person born with certain innate level of intelligence is able to progress through education, through environment, through experience, and so on. If you look at computers today, they are far ahead of the human capability in logical mathematical domain, but not so much in the other domains. So from the perspective of computer science, the definition is about optimizing the ability to solve problems in terms of using minimum resources while solving the problem. So intelligence is somehow connected also to minimal use of resources. So if we do this, if we define intelligence like this, then obviously the way our culture of spending natural resources as if there was no tomorrow puts our intelligence itself in question. So there have been studies which say that if the whole world, everybody was living the way an average North American lives, we need resources worth 5 Earths. And if we live all over the world, everybody lives the way an average European lives, we need the resources worth 3 Earths, and we have only 1 Earth. So it's somewhere the usage of resources has not been done intelligently as far as human race is concerned. So when we look at intelligence, it's not just some form of pattern recognition and response. It reflects a broader and deeper capability for comprehending our surroundings and kind of making sense of things or figuring out what to do in a best way. But when we look at our intelligence tests, and this is what I was referring to earlier also, when we look at our intelligence tests, what do they measure? Our psychological tests and assessments that we are very fond of using for determining IQ, for example. Most people will cluster around the average of IQ 100. Few of us would be very bright, that is greater than 130, or very dull, that's less than 70. The important thing is success in life directly measured by these IQ tests? They do not measure creativity, they do not measure character, they do not measure personality or other important differences between individuals. And they are not intended to do that as well. Because as I said, in our Western culture, fast answers are considered to be a form of intelligence, but which is not necessarily true. So, special personality traits, special talents, aptitudes, physical capabilities, experience, there are some important things that our intelligence tests yet do not measure. Now, in this perspective, now we should look at other definitions of AI. Okay, and in unified theories of cognition, Alan Newell, one of the founding fathers of AI, he defined intelligence as the degree to which a system approximates a knowledge level system. That is, a perfect intelligence is defined as the ability to bring the knowledge a system has at its disposal to bear for the solution of a given problem. So, this is always synonymous with a goal achievement. Whether that is the right perspective of intelligence, and whether when we create AI with respect to this kind of an understanding of intelligence, would that really be useful is another matter. So, all of us are familiar with the story of King Midas, who asked for a boon, who said that I want everything I touch to turn into gold. Looks like a perfectly grand solution for becoming the richest person in the world, and according to some, that is also becoming the most powerful person in the world. But what happened was he couldn't eat anything. His daughter turned into gold, and so on. So the important idea here is that we need to be able to also specify what we exactly want when we create an AI system. And unless we define AI correctly and our understanding of what we want it to do is clear, this is going to be always a messy affair, because we might create a system and give it a goal that it achieves perfectly, but that is really not what we actually wanted in the first place. Like Midas didn't want his daughter to turn into gold in the first place. So that is a problem. So, broadly speaking, AI would include tasks like complex logic inference, diagnosis, visual recognition, comprehension of natural language, game playing, explanation, planning, and so on. So, these are the areas in which we need to work when we create artificial intelligence. There are three different types of artificial intelligence as on today. People talk about artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and artificial super intelligence. So, artificial narrow intelligence is the ability to perform some tasks that require intelligence. For example, chess, playing chess or Go, or any other diagnosis or any other task that is in a particular domain. So that is why the word narrow. But an intelligence that is created for solving one particular problem in a narrow domain, it cannot do anything else. It just does that. Whereas artificial general intelligence is the ability to achieve complex goals in complex environments using limited computational resources, and this is in a general setting. So you could give it any complex environment and a complex goal, and it should be able to achieve those goals. Artificial superintelligence is the next level, where the intellect greatly exceeds the cognitive performance of humans in virtually all domains of interest. And this is possibly the future. This is where we are heading. And this is where people say that this could be the greatest invention man has ever made, as well as possibly the last invention. Because after that, the artificial superintelligence entities would take over the world as we have taken over due to our superior intellect. So, what would be the different types of AI? May want to model how humans think, we may model how humans act, but whether all humans really act in an intelligent way is a doubtful question. So maybe we would want to model how ideal agents should think and ideal agents should act, not exactly as a human would think or act. So modern AI focuses on the last definition. That's the engineering approach. Because here Success is judged by how well the agent performs, not necessarily using ideas similar to the humans. For example, the chess playing program could operate in a very, very different way than a human expert because it has got much more raw computational power than the expert, but it achieves the same goal. So success is judged by how well it performs rather than how it performs that particular task. So today we have AI that has achieved several successes, and I'll be talking about that. But before I go into the successes and give you the impression that AI has almost achieved the level of human intelligence, let me clarify that in 1956, people thought that artificial intelligence will soon replicate human intelligence. And in 2020, the situation is still the same. People again are saying that human level intelligence is just around the corner. The paradoxical situation is that we yet do not fully understand the brain, but we believe we can develop something equivalent or more, even something much better than the brain, human brain. Which again, there are both sides of the coin. There are people on both sides of the debate where as to whether this is possible or not possible. So we'll have a look at that. But there's definitely been a lot of progress in AI, and these are the different topics in which there has been considerable progress, and progress in all these areas have led to progress in terms of various applications. For example, game playing, I've already mentioned chess, Jeopardy, Go, and so on. Optical character recognition means that you scan an image of some handwritten or typewritten text, and it becomes uh, editable form in, say, any editor of your own choice, like Microsoft Word or Notepad or whatever. We've also achieved a great success in terms of face recognition. You've seen several advertisements wherein the face itself is used as a passkey for opening a particular laptop or whatever device that you wanted to open. We also have dealt with recommender systems, or Google, some people believe is the biggest success of AI because it you type half a question and it understands fully what you're trying to say and prompts you about what you're trying to ask. So these are all successes of AI. So here are the examples. Self-driving cars are another example, automatic surgery. Then in healthcare, considerable progress has been made. So much so that an important point that I need to mention here is that this program that beat the world champion in Go, that created a lot of furore because of two reasons. First, Go is a much more complicated program than chess. So anybody who has played chess would know that chess is definitely a very complicated program and requires human intelligence for us to be able to play that game proficiently. And Go is much more complicated. The board size is larger, and strategy wise, it's much more complicated. So in 2012, a set of AI experts the AI program that could beat the world champion be created. And the consensus among the experts in AI, experts at the world level, was that not for the next 10 years. And in 4 years, it was already done. So that's the rapidity with which things are changing. And that is very important to understand because even those problems that today the technology is not good enough to solve, already it is good enough to solve several of our problems. But even those which it's not good enough to solve today, maybe they'll be solved tomorrow. So because the progress is very, very fast these days. Every day we hear some or the other news item regarding some progress that AI has achieved. So there are huge investments that have been made by companies like Google, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, IBM, and so on. And they have also created a consortium to address the concerns that I raised earlier as to whether the AI that we create will be definitely beneficial for the human race or it will eliminate the human race itself and make it subservient to it. So there are societies that have been created. So here is the kind of hype that you see, and this is from people in computer science. People say machine learning is the hot new thing. That's from John Hennessy, the president of Stanford. Machine learning is going to result in a real revolution. This is the chief technology officer of Sun. Machine learning is today's discontinuity, the chief executive officer of Yahoo. So people are really excited about the kind of achievements that are being made. And some of these achievements are voice recognition, like I can now, 20%, it's estimated, of Google searches are through voice commands rather than sitting and typing in the phrase that you want to search. Then people are doing sentiment analysis, wherein you can examine text or speech and find out the sentiment behind that. Fraud detection, flaw detection, then enterprise resource planning, business analytics, economic analytics, recommendation engines. These are all applications of machine learning, which have been very successful and are being already used in various domains. So all these successes have resulted in people making this kind of a statement. This is from one of the pioneers of the open education. He's one of the founding fathers of Coursera, Andrew Ng, and he's comparing AI with electricity. So if you look at the historical technological development, in the early 1900s, when electricity came, it revolutionized almost all industries. All industries, the way they were working was changed because now there was a clean way of transferring muscle power from one place to the other. Similarly, AI is now providing you means of transferring brain power from the machine. And it is estimated that any task that a person can perform with, say, less than a few seconds of thinking, that can be easily automated. So there'll be a lot of jobs which actually are a series of decisions, each of which falls in this category. And therefore, all those jobs could be easily replaced by machines. That's how we see all these automatic teller machines, ATMs, and we see vending machines. We see now stores that operate without any human being at all. You can just walk into the store, do your shopping, and automatically from your card, the amount gets deducted because you have enough cameras and sensors around, so they know exactly what you put into the card, how much you have to pay for it, and it deducts. So there is no standing in queues or whatever. Then there are AI systems that scan your, say, for example, retina while you are walking into the airport, and already it is recognized that you are so and you have a valid ticket for a flight within the reasonable time frame of the time that you're entering into the airport. So no standing in queue for check-in and so on. So all these are systems that have already been automated, and technologically it's been shown that this can be done. So now I come to the point of what are the implications of AI for education. When I say that these are jobs which are actually part, which are comprising of parts that can be very easily automated. So we can create an AI system that can replace a person. Should the way we have been teaching our students now change? Because for some aspects, those kind of skills that you're teaching in school may not be relevant by the time they enter into the job market. Let me give you an example. When we were students, a lot of emphasis was placed on learning by rote mathematical tables. You had to know 17 into 17, how much is that? And without even giving a thought, you should be able to repeat that. So tables up to 20 were the norm in schools. Everybody had to know that. But now it's not necessary. Everybody carries a calculator, and those are very cheap calculators, and you can do those multiplications. So why do we need to cram them up? So that's just one example. So are there topics that could be eliminated from the curriculum or topics that should be added to the curriculum because of the capabilities of AI to solve problems or at least assist in solving problems? As educators, that is very important for you to understand. Business as usual is not possible. So when we define our learning objectives, what should we teach? How should Shakespeare or any literature be taught now? Or actually, should Shakespeare be taught? What are the learning outcomes? Can all evaluation be MCQ based? Today, what is the significance of questions like describe falana or discuss falana or write short notes on falana? Because I can just type falana in Google and I can get whatever information I want about that topic. So, should we ask such questions? How should we evaluate the learning of the students? Do we need to evaluate the students on their memory and their capability to reproduce the text that they have so painstakingly crammed up over the semester? Does that still make sense? So these are questions that the educators have to think. So when we talk about AI in education, it is not only how AI can be used to impart education. We also need to understand what AI can do in the job market, how it is going to change the way we live. Life and living is going to get changed. When life and living are going to get changed, the skill set needed for that is going to change. So, what is the skill set that will be required to live in a world wherein we have AI for company? That is the question that educators need to understand and address. Business as usual is not possible. We need to change. That's the message that I would like to convey. And please, if there are any points of discussion at any time, you can stop me and ask. Oh, three participants have raised hands. So can you please ask a question, whatever you want to ask? Or should we address them at the end? Let me go into the chat and see what people have asked. Or, or you're not.
Chat box. Dear participants, if you don't want to speak, you can write your questions in chat box, please.
Okay. Should I go into the chat and see the questions now? Or
No, sir. So, sir, you can continue. I'm just noting out the questions. We will start the questioning answering session at the end of this session.
okay, done.
Yes, sir. You can start
So
now.
okay, so how we teach, however, has yet to change. I mean, this is I put 2017 because I didn't want to get into this corona mess. Apart from corona, apart from COVID, things never changed. From 1900 to 2017, the classroom roughly appeared to be the same. But the problem is that these tech savvy kids, there have been several studies, it's very hard to hold their attention. Their attention spans are much, much smaller. And they are no longer willing to subjugate themselves to the kind of studies that go back to the 1900s. So are we doing something to improve the emotional intelligence of students? Because this is going to become much, much more important in the coming days, wherein the students of today, when they enter the job market of tomorrow, they're going to interact much more with machines than with people. And their social skills may not be of the level at which they were earlier. So they will need a lot of emotional strength to be able to survive that kind of situation. Are we doing something to improve their spiritual intelligence? Are we doing something to make them better citizens, more responsive to the changing needs of society? And how are we evaluating? So it's often said that college grades and success in life are uncorrelated. That means that it doesn't matter what grade you got in college. You could be the topper and a failure in life, or you could be a bottomer in college and a eminently successful, even a college dropout. We have several famous college dropouts and very successful in life. So does it mean that we are evaluating the wrong thing in schools and colleges? What should we evaluate? The irony is that when we take admission tests, we have a set of MCQs that the student has to answer. And then when the industry people come to recruit them, especially in my faculty, in engineering faculty, they say that these people don't have communication skills, they don't have good personality, and therefore they are not good enough. But they were the ones who solved all those MCQs that you gave them, and that's why they got admitted. That means that your admission criteria was not good. This is true even for exams like IIT JEE. So are we using the wrong criteria? How are we evaluating? What are we evaluating? What should we be evaluating? These are questions that this teaching community that I'm addressing, they are the ones who can change and bring in some sanity into the system. This is a classic curve we have in engineering, that you start with numbers and go to high quality mathematics like advanced calculus in school and college, and finally you end up handling spreadsheets in job. So why did we actually go up to that level? So this is just an aside, not that advanced calculus should not be taught or it's not good, but just as a food for thought. Are we teaching the right things? So what is the vision of education in an AI world? So where does AI come in? During 40-year information age, we told computers what to do. I mean, the first thing that you taught in programming was garbage in, garbage out, and so on. But these days, computers are programming themselves. So rise of code marks the beginning of a new era of augmented intelligence. Many of the AI startups actually originated in universities, and now AI will transform universities. How universities will respond to this AI revolution will profoundly reshape science, innovation, education, and society itself. So these are the grand challenges, AI grand challenges for education. We need to be able to address the 21st century skills, analysis of interaction data, the vast amount of data that we are collecting about learning, social context, learning context, personal interests, and more. That those are key sources of information that must be leveraged in future educational technology research. Universal access to global classrooms. This has been sped up by COVID-19. And today, classrooms are already interconnected the way we are interconnected in this particular Zoom meeting. And therefore, how we can still retain accessibility and personal communication, that is going to be a challenge. Understanding, modeling, and guiding learning in the context of a learner's life outside school is also critical if we are to improve education. Gone are the days when engineering we used to say 4 saal ki padhai, 40 saal ki kamai. I mean, that's not possible today because the world will be very different even when they graduate at the end of 4 years, and the syllabus that was created for them when they entered the engineering institution was could already be outdated by the time they graduate. That's the speed with which technologies are changing. So we need to create lifelong learning capabilities in the students. So one example of what I'm actually talking about. Many times we design our courses such that, say, for example, in continuous evaluation, the fourth unit will have certain advanced concepts in the subject that are dependent on learning the first and second unit well. So unless you are good at the first and second unit, it will be difficult for you to pick up the concepts in the fourth unit. Now we have our first mates, and in the first mates there will be several students who score very low, even 0 or 1. But what do we do about them? Nothing. After the mids, the fourth unit will start for everybody. Whether you scored 0 or 1, or you scored, say, 100 on 100, all of you are doing the fourth unit. And you're doing the fourth unit at the speed of the average student. So, what was the purpose of that evaluation if there isn't any correction that is taking place? So, mastery learning approach is a category of instructional methods which establishes a level of performance that the students must master before moving on to the next unit. And it has been shown that students performing in the 50th percentile in a traditional classroom can perform in the 98th percentile with mastery learning plus one-on-one support. Because why are we not doing this? We're not doing this because it's not possible in a large classroom of 100 students. How can you actually address individual concerns? But if we have AI tutors, that is definitely possible. So for much of the last 25 years, the AI community has been focusing on solving the 2 sigma problem towards creating systems that are as effective as human on one-to-one tutoring. But this has to yet percolate to the level of schools and colleges. However, progress is there, and this is where AI will come in. Major strides in technologies have been made in terms of helping teachers currently teaching in traditional models. Like, for example, the automatic attendance system, automatic evaluation systems. I'm not saying that the teacher is going to get replaced. We need tools to be able to diagnose the issues in the learner's understanding. And I'll describe 2 items of experience of my own, where the timely guidance, feedback, and explanations are very, very important. So when I was in class 1, my class teacher sent a note asking my father to come to the school and meet her. They were kind of surprised because I was always doing very well, and hopefully I was never a problem child. So why was the father being called? When he went there, the teacher told that, look, your son always does everything right when I give dictation. But when he copies from the board, he makes mistakes. Please get his eyes checked. So that is the personal attention that the teacher gave. So I'm not saying that teachers are going to get replaced. What I'm saying is that there are several domains, several parts of education wherein it is not possible to give individual attention. And there, these AI tools, which can kind of substantiate the teaching in terms of whether you call it inverted classrooms or whatever you want, terminology you want to give, that can really help in enhancing our education to the level at which it is desired in the 21st century. So even with MCQs, this is a mental ability test software this we presented way back in 98. Now, we create multiple choice questions based tests, and we say that, okay, here are 120 questions that you have to answer in 120 minutes. Are all questions of the same level? Although we give them each one mark or whatever, equal marks, but they're not of the same level. And we give all students the same questions. So suppose there are questions which we would out of them categorize as easy, then what is the point in asking the same student hard questions when he's muffing the easy questions also? Which means that now we have already seen that the student is not worth more than, say, 3 on 10. Now we have to find out through better means whether he or she is worth 0, 1, 2, or 3. We already decided that he or she is not worth more than 10. Then we can change the questions that appear on his or her screen online when we are holding an online MCQ test. It doesn't have to be the same set of questions always to everybody. You can do a better search and better evaluation by focusing on those aspects that the student is not doing well, and in understanding how, what are the kind of lacuna. So that is the kind of software that we created, and this was appreciated in this international conference on cognitive systems organized by NIIT. Soon, so this is kind of AI. Soon, AI will also be able to grade written responses and essays. Today, it's still a nascent stage, but yes, soon we'll have AI that's able to grade responses. There are other success stories that we can talk about. Customized experiential learning opportunities, better to maintain better learner motivation and engagement. So those are ideas that AI has implemented. I can give another example of Grammarly, especially the English teachers. We have excellent AI tools that correct grammatical mistakes that are made in written English, and one of them is called Grammarly, and I would encourage you to use that and see what it does. Spelling correction, everybody would have probably already used in as part of Microsoft Word. There are also grammar corrections as part of Microsoft Word, and Grammarly is an enhanced version of that. So that brings us to the point as to how we can utilize this tool to A, speed up the students' learning grammar in schools, so that the time saved can be then utilized to teach maybe higher order thought processes, increase the kind of language style that the person has picked. I'm not saying don't teach English. Please don't understand me as saying that. What I'm saying is parts of English teaching that were very important earlier may not be so important, because now we have tools that can rectify that part. So you can then move to the next level and try to increase the thought process and the language style and improve things even further. So that's the kind of improvements that AI enable in classrooms. Now, whether the student is a good student or a bad student, he or she gets the same textbook. Now, suppose we have an AI system, the AI system is able to judge the student and knows how to explain ideas to a particular student, because they know the student's background, the skills, and how he or she wants to or likes to learn. So customized kind of learning material curated especially for the individual, that is a great possibility in teaching in the AI world. So we have chatbots that are responding to students' questions, virtual assistants, and so on. Then there are curated course materials, online learning materials, adaptive learning materials. These are all things that are already available, and I would encourage you to have a look at them. Content Technologies is an excellent company that's producing such things. So here I'm talking about Grammarly, then Turnitin to handle the scores of copying from various sources. We can go through a system of checks and balances, wherein you can check whether things have been picked up from somewhere in toto or in part, and then warn the student that that is not kind of permitted. We need to be ethical in our submissions and so on. There are also study and test preparation tools like Quizlet and Kaplan. So, and they are getting smarter and smarter. The system that I described that we have developed here in DI, it also has learning capabilities, in the sense that it keeps track of how many students have appeared in the test and also answered a particular question, and then keeps track of whether most of the students have answered it correctly, then it will shift it to the very easy category. And conversely, if most of the students have not been able to answer it correctly, it will shift it to the very hard category and everything in between. So that kind of learning capabilities are also possible, so that the database of questions that you create for curating a multiple choice questions question paper for a particular student, that can then do a good job, just as we do in interviews. After the first 3 4 questions, we already kind of placed the person as to whether it belongs to the 0 to 3 or 4 to 6 or 7 to 10 category out of 10. And then we do finer search in finding out whether in the 7 to 10 category, does he or she deserve 10 on 10 or 9 on 10 or 8 on 10 or 7 on 10, so on. So further questioning is only at that level. Then you will not ask very simple questions because you already decided that that person belongs to the category of 7 to 10 on 10. Similarly, your multiple choice questions can also be administered, and AI can be used for such purposes. So then there are explorative assistive technologies, assessment technologies that AI is being used for. Learning management systems like the one we are using in our university. People are using Moodle also. So those are the things that also incorporate some elements of AI. Most of it is statistical, but yes, other elements, including intelligence, are also there. Now I come to certain philosophical questions, and that's the last topic that I'm going to talk about. Now, we need some research into consequences of AI on the levels and quality of employment and the implications. That is a very, very important topic these days. In the changing world, what will be the quality of employment? What will be the quality of skills required for that employment? And when you're talking about flipping the classroom, we are getting forced to think about where we can add real value. That's what I've been talking about for the past 10, 15 minutes. Because just giving a textbook and expecting the student to read and answer questions based on that in a standard classroom kind of test would no longer suffice in the 21st century. So we need to be able to monitor performance in a better way. We need to be able to teach in a better way. And that's the message that I would like to convey, that the technology of AI will come to your help in doing all this. So thanks for your attention. That's all I had to say. And now I can take questions. So questions, please.
Thank you very much, sir. Whatever you have presented, your knowledge sharing, I think my participants have also enjoyed this session, and they have already sent very much questions. So I think I should ask some questions, sir, because if we will permit the participant to ask the questions, it can be a little disturbing. So
okay, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So some participants are asking about that. How can AI be used for evaluations?
I have talked in quite some detail as to, like, you see, when you say AI being used for evaluation, the range of answers can be enormous. Okay, let me give you an example of what's happening in some Chinese schools. First of all, do we really need an exam for evaluation? If we can monitor the attention of the students in the classroom, whether the student, when he or she is sitting in the classroom, is being attentive to the material being covered, we kind of naturally expect that he or she has a certain level of intelligence, and if he or she pays enough attention, would definitely grasp the material. So can we have cameras in the classroom that captures the expressions on the faces of the students and finds out whether he or she is concentrating on the material that's being covered in the class, what is the percentage of time the person is concentrating on the material that's being covered in the class, that could itself be evaluation. So this is a classic example of how AI is getting used in evaluation. Then I talked about curating multiple choice question tests for a particular student depending on the performance on the previous questions. Identifying domains. So if you look at all these science tests and math talent tests, they'll give you very detailed reports of which topics the student did well, which topics the student did not do well, and so on. So that's all possible through simple statistics. Now taking that to the next level, how do we reinforce the study material that's provided to the student to ensure that those topics are learned better when the student appears in a similar test next time? So that's how AI can help.
Thank you, sir. Sir, some participants were also asking about that if we can also use AI tools to evaluate subjective type questions.
I talked about that, and I said that soon, yeah, this is yet in the research domain. Okay, let me elaborate. How does AI work? That gives me a chance to explain how it works. So typically, most of the successes in AI are based on what is called as supervised learning. In supervised learning, we give a lot of examples, and through those examples, we train our systems, and those systems are then able to replicate the experience that they have been trained for. So if you're saying that I want to evaluate automatically essays, what it means is that you have trained the system with, say, a huge number of essays given as input, along with the marks that were given for those essays as input. So now it's storing all these examples in a processed form, not necessarily in the text form, in the way they were input, but in a processed form, so that next time you give it an essay that it has to grade, it will essentially, what it will do is it will go through your database of previous essays, see where this closely matches the essay that was provided to it, and give it as many marks as was given by the human examiner in the input data. That's the way things work. Now, is it possible to train your system for the particular topic having enough examples of essays? If you can do that, even today you can do this. That's the point. It's not magic. You have to train it. I hope I have answered that question. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So the next question is, how can one identify that the particular tool or application is actually based on AI or not?
Yeah, so that's a tricky question. Now, we have an engineering approach. And in engineering approach, the approach is not whether it is based on AI. That is actually an irrelevant question. What is the purpose we want to solve? Is it solving our purpose or not? What it is based on is a secondary matter. If our purpose requires intelligence to solve, then the system must be having some kind of intelligence. Whether traditional AI approach, whether neural networks approach, machine learning approach, what is the approach behind it? That comes only from examining the code, examining the software. But functionality, we can evaluate and judge as to whether it is performing intelligently or not. And the way to do it is by crash testing it. Give it the worst kind of examples and see whether it performs gracefully or not. That's the way to look at it.
Okay, sir. The next question is, how can AI and emotional intelligence can be together or can be balanced together in student life?
Sure. Uh,
Yes.
so I've been working in AI for the last 20 years, and I hope I am okay emotionally. So why do we think that these are technology makes a person inhuman or whatever? In fact, if you understand, my favorite way of putting things is, the more we understand computers, the more we understand computer science and our efforts to replicate human intelligence, we understand how tough it is to do that. And then we understand that someone up there is a much better computer scientist than all computer scientists of this world combined, because he or she has produced something that's far exceeding computer capabilities as on today.
Sir, the next question is
Makes you
actually,
humble, actually.
yes, sir. As we all know, that our government is basically working for the skill-based curriculum. So some of the participants were asking about that how can AI help in the education which is based on skill-based curriculum?
Yeah. So, two answers. One is that I'm coordinating myself a Bachelor of Vocation program in AI and robotics in DEI. So, it's a full 3 year skill program in which we are developing skills related to AI and robotics. So, that's one answer. The second answer is whether we can use AI tools to develop other skills. So, for example, I'll talk about two applications that we developed or are in the process of developing. So I had a student who was who had a shop which is considered to be the biggest shop in Agra for saris. So identification of silk. Now this market is pretty dubious in the sense that when you go to the shop, the most attractive one may not really be the most expensive one, but you can put a price tag that is very expensive because it is very attractive, and we will get fooled. The material is not expensive, but it is very attractive. So how do you know about that material? How do you? So this is a skill that has to be trained for. Now we developed an image processing solution for that. The student captured high resolution images of all the materials. We created a database of 125,000 images, used 100,000 images for training and 25,000 images for testing. So as I said, in case of essay evaluation, here again, we are using the human knowledge, encapsulating that in a machine learning program, and then developing a tool that has got that skill. Now, once you have given the tool to the student can then uh, examine so many different examples and use the tool to verify whether he or she is correct or not. So training then becomes very simple. You don't need an expert to be around all the time. The basic problem today is we don't have enough experts around to be able to handle the large number of students who need to be skilled. Skilling is one to one training. वो सिर पे खड़े होकर देखना पड़ता है क्या कर रहा है, तभी उसको स्किल सिखा सकते हो आप. So if we can develop machine learning solutions, AI solutions, that will then somehow compensate for the lack of teachers who can then pitch in as and when possible.
Yes, sir. The next question is how can the developing countries like ours country, India, can apply AI in education system as it can be costly enough?
Yeah,
Many participants were asking about this question, sir.
yeah. So actually, it is meant for our country. It's the other way around. When you make a car and then you want to make another car, does the second car come cheaper than the first car? Making it cost as much as the design part, yes. But the components and the material cost and the making cost, they are all same. But that's not true in software. You can replicate software a million times without any additional expense. Once you have created a software tool or a solution, that solution, I talked about Grammarly. Yeah, so those are tools that can be, software can be replicated as many times. And more the numbers, the lesser the cost. So cost is definitely not an hindrance as far as the long overall perspective goes. Initial cost in terms of establishing computers in schools, yes, that is there. But once you have a computer, having software to teach history, geography, social, and then commerce or maths and science, all those will run on the same computer. And multiple copies of software don't cost more. The cost is not equal to n into the cost of individual pieces. So we have to remember that. That is where the catch is.
Yes, sir. Some of the participants are also asking about the difference between biological and mathematical models.
Say that again. Difference between logical and mathematical models.
Sir, biological and
Biological
mathematical
models.
models. Yes, sir.
Okay. Biological models. Okay, fine.
Yes.
So I think to rephrase that question, they probably want to ask the difference between how a brain works and how a computer works. Is that the angle in which the question is being asked? I think that's true. Yeah. So brain is a collection of say 100 billion neurons, each neuron being connected to thousands of other neurons. So the information processing and the storage is in these connections. Actually, each neuron is pretty slow. It works in milliseconds. And in our electronics, like the laptop on which I'm sitting and talking to you, the electronics will have switching times that are in nanoseconds. Nanosecond is 10 to the power minus 9 seconds. And millisecond is 10 to the power minus 3. So our neuron individually is a million times slower than the electronic components that you have. However, the kind of parallel processing that has happening in the brain, these 100 billion neurons together are doing something amazing that the computers of today, in many of the pattern recognition tasks, they cannot compete with the computer at all. Although each individual element is much slower, together these 100 billion elements, they are able to do much more. So that is at the physical level. And I'm not even talking about the cognitive and mind level and the higher spiritual level.
Yes, sir. And in the last, there is a question which is asking about the disadvantages of AI in education. This is the last question, sir.
Yeah, I remember. Uh,
Yes, sir. It can be threat for the future teachers in terms of unemployment also.
yeah. I remember in school we used to be forced to write essays like science is a good servant but a bad master and so on. ये सब चीजें तो हमेशा से
Yes.
आती रही हैं.
Yes.
AI is a technology just like any other technology. But first time we are creating a technology that is replacing the intellectual part of the human being rather than the physical part. We have always created technologies like cars and aeroplanes, which help us move faster than our legs will permit. Invented telescopes that will help us see farther than our eyes will see, and so on. So physical and हमारे senses को और हमारे muscular abilities को amplify करने के लिए technology use करते थे. अभी क्या है कि this is amplifying our brain power. So that is why this apprehension. But having been in computer science for so many years, we are nowhere near human capabilities, number one. Number two, the physical presence of a teacher goes much beyond knowledge transfer. ये जो मॉडल है ना कि एक स्टूडेंट एक डिब्बा है जिसमें टीचर जो है वो नॉलेज ढक्कन खोल के डाल के ढक्कन बंद कर देता है. दिस मॉडल इज ऑफ कोर्स रिप्लेसेबल बाय अ कंप्यूटर, बट अ टीचर इज मच मोर देन दैट. अ टीचर इज अ रोल मॉडल फॉर द स्टूडेंट. That human touch, the way a teacher can motivate a student through love, care, affection, that is not possible. It's impossible to replicate through machines. The teachers will always be important.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for clear all the doubts of the participants. Participant, I think you all have learned a lot with Professor C. Patvardhan. Thank you very much, sir. Now we will begin the next session, which will be taken by Dr. Neha Jain, and it will be started in a few minutes. So please be continued or please be present in the meeting. Don't leave.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot then.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Fine.
Unmute. Sorry, participant, the mic was on mute mode. So I just repeat. Good afternoon, all the respected person connected over here in today's workshop on fundamentals of artificial intelligence and its application in education. After the very informative session of Professor C. Patvardhan, we move on to our second session of the workshop. It gives me an immense pleasure to introduce our expert of session 2, Professor N.K. Mishra. Professor N.K. Mishra is HOD in Department of MCA, Hindustan College of Management and Computer Studies. Sir is having more than 20 years of experience of teaching AI at PG level. He is certified AI professional and his research areas are machine learning and development of AI. Welcome you, sir. I would like to call Professor N.K. Mishra to share some knowledge on application of AI in education with all of us. Sir, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the nice introduction. I think I'm audible to all. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay, right, ma'am. So let's begin with this application of AI in education. I thank you all the organizers for giving me the chance to talk with the teachers, because I'm also a teacher. So can I share the presentation, ma'am?
Yes, sir. You can share.
Okay, just a few minutes, ma'am. Ma'am, as the net connectivity is an issue, so can I switch off my the camera?
Sure, sir. Sure.
Right, ma'am. Just a minute.
Yeah.
I think my slide is visible to all.
So visible.
Right, ma'am. So I think the artificial intelligence is not a very new word. More than 70 years has been the time which has been taken in research, conducting research in AI. And this is just like, this can be compared as the discovery of fire and the electricity, because the kind of revolution that these two things have had bring in the world. Similarly, the AI development of AI has done for the world. AI might be the single largest technology, a revolution of our lifetimes, and with the potential to disrupt almost all aspects of human existence. This AI has been used in almost nowadays in every sphere of life. We are using this AI, knowingly or unknowingly. Many industries are investing in cognitive and AI solutions. A global forecast says that around 50.1% annual growth rate of investment is there, and it will reach 57.6 billion US dollar by 2021 in the AI field. As a result of virtually unlimited computing power and the decreasing cost of data storage, we are on the cusp of the exponential age of AI. As organizations learn to unlock the value trapped in vast volume of data, so the availability of the data, and because of this development of the internet and being used by almost everybody, and this data has been used for the development of this AI. The speedy development of AI is just because the availability of data now. In the earlier days, the data was not available very easily because most of the things was manual, and so it was very difficult to train any machine or anything to do the task that is being easily done by the human beings. But nowadays we have volumes of data available, and we can use those data for our research, for developing some applications, and that will make great solutions for the problems that is right now we have. Even AI enables machines to act with higher levels of intelligence and emulate the human capabilities of sense, comprehend, and act. Like computer vision and audio processing enable the machines to actively perceive the world around them. NLP and inference engines can enable AI systems to analyze and understand the information collected. So a machine can not only comprehend can visualize the environment around it, it can also understand the languages that is being used by the people, and then it can give you more solutions for in the education field. We are with, again, AI is adaptive and dynamic nature and accelerated development. AI got a profound impact in the education services. As education form the basis of all knowledge and progress, inclusion of AI in updating and empowering education system has resulted in better impartment of knowledge and fair evolution of assessments. We can use AI for the impartment of knowledge and the evaluation of the students as well. According to surveys, 75% of teachers believe that printed books will be entirely replaced by digital learning tools. Again, AI will be used in this. Although in India, the importance of AI-enabled education sector is amplified, as that 25%, most of the people, most of the generation is youth population below age of 25, which is half of the population of the country. And AI will play a huge role in revolutionizing the education sector from head to toe. Although we may not see humanoid robots acting as a teacher within the next decade, but still many AI-based projects are already in progress in the India and the worldwide to help the students and teachers get more out of the educational experience. Rather than learning in general or based on society's understanding of importance, AI can help in class, keeping track of close track of the students, the current trends and redesigning of education at every step. AI can help you. AI is also being implemented and utilized in administration, learning, tutoring, grading, and assessment, as already been told to you all by Dr. Professor Patvardhan Saab. So almost if you see, this AI can help the teacher to monitor, to do all kind of testing, evaluations, assessment. Not only that, even from the planning of the course to designing of the course, and then implementing it, then evaluating, and making a student skillful, this AI can help. The amalgamation of technology with innovative learning processes will definitely revolutionize the education. India, being one of the leading developing countries, is following the trend and adopting this innovative technology in education. But still this in India, AI is not being used as it should be. Nearly 160 billion US dollar is spent globally by schools on education technology up to 2016. And now it is growing up to 17% annually through 2020. So India is definitely improving adoption of technology in education, but not at the speed required. As you know, India needs these kind of solutions to reduce the cost of education and to increase the reachability of the education to the far-flung areas. Now, almost all boards of education in India are including AI in their syllabus. So it's a good news, because if the AI is being included in the syllabus of all the boards, definitely the students will be able to understand this technology and will use for its own betterment. Similarly, if you see percent-wise figure, gross enrollment ratio is 97% at elementary level and 80% at secondary level in Indian education, which is a substantial growth resulted with efforts of both central and state governments. But the problem is being a very good rate of growth in enrollment, but still the problem is how to retain these students. So still the problem is of low retention and poor learning outcomes, which is still putting a bad impact on this whole effort done by the central government and the state government. So the government are thinking how to increase the retention rate of the students and how to improve their knowledge, so that they can better, they can actually gain the skills and they can do better in their career.
Sir, sorry for interruption.
Yeah, ma'am.
We are able to see only first slide of your presentation.
Right, ma'am. I'm just giving a background how this AI can be used in education, and then I'll move on to the theory of this AI, basically
Okay,
the
that is
history of the AI. Right, ma'am. So although we have many AI tools that is available, but still there are some are free and some are costly. But naturally, if we are using this AI in our education system, it is going to put a great impact on this education system, and it will definitely be a very beneficial for this. Now, if you see, artificial intelligence is nothing but we are just making machines which can mimic like a human being, or which can display some kind of intelligence like a human being. So although there are so many definitions given by some researchers, some scientists like Richard Knight, Peter Norvig, and Stuart Russell, they have given their own definitions. So there are many definitions depending on how you, what is your goal for the artificial intelligence, what kind of work you want to get from the artificial intelligence. Accordingly, it has been defined. But if we see broadly, AI has been defined on 4 different blocks. One is thinking like a human, acting like a human, thinking rationally, and acting rationally. So these are the 4 main blocks on which AI has been defined by most of the authors. If we go for this, the history of AI, the AI has been, this term has been coined in 1956 at the Dartmouth College in a workshop, and that workshop has gone for a long time and been attended by the renowned scientists, John McCarthy, Alan Newell, Herbert Simon, and Marvin Minsky and Arthur Samuel. all these people have attended this workshop, and this term artificial intelligence has been coined that there. And since then, this the persons like Alan Newell and the Herbert Simon, they have worked a lot in this artificial intelligence. And now what we are getting is the hardcore effort of these people. So if we see, as I said, that this AI is not a new term. So in 1943, McCulloch and Walter Pitt has published a paper, A Logical Calculus of Ideas Eminent in Nervous Activity. And this paper has first proposed a mathematical model for building a neural network. And in this neural network, they're trying to use this AI. Then in 1949 also, Hebb has given some rules for the AI, and that is called the Hebbian rule, which is very important model for the AI. Then in 1950, Alan Turing publishes Computing Machinery and Intelligence, proposing what is now known as Turing test. And actually this Turing test is a very good test, and it identifies whether a machine or a particular model can be called intelligent or not. So what it does basically, it puts the machine in one place, hidden from the person who is asking the questions, and a human being is also answering the same questions. But human being and machines both are hidden from the investigator. So investigator will keep on asking the questions, and the answers will be coming both from the machine and the human being. And if the investigator cannot differentiate that whether the answer is coming from the machine or it is coming from the human being, then that machine will be called that it is artificially intelligent, and it will pass the Turing test. So this Turing test is very important in understanding whether the machine is, like somebody in the previous session asked, how will I know that whether the software is using AI or not? So we can ask the software to pass this Turing test, and if it is passing, then we will say that it is AI enabled. Then in 1952, Arthur Samuel developed a self-learning program to play checkers. In 1954, the IBM machine translation experiment automatically translated 60 carefully selected Russian sentences into English. So, and in 1956, as I said, John McCarthy was working on this AI. In 1958, the Lisp programming language has been developed, and Lisp is being used for developing AI machines. Then in 1959, Herbert Simon and Jesse Shaw developed the general problem solver, also called a GPS, a program designed to imitate human problem solving. Then in 1963, John McCarthy starts an AI lab at Stanford. In 1966, Automatic Language Processing Advisory Committee, reported by the US government, details the lack of progress in machine translations. One more thing that I want to tell you, that this AI has seen so many AI winters also, because the expectation from the AI was very high of the industry and the people at that time. And when those expectations could not be fulfilled by this AI, the industries have stopped investing in this AI. So many winters has been seen by this AI, and through many winters it has come to now, which is really very promising. So nowadays maximum investment is going on in this AI technology only, but earlier few times the people was not very much interested in AI, and almost I can say for 10 years nobody was working in this AI field because the investment was not there in this. So in 1969, as you can see, Dendel program in Mycin was developed. It was a decision support system and being used for diagnosing the blood infections. Then in 1972, Prolog has been developed. This was also a programming language for AI systems development. So this way, many years of experimentation, research, this AI has come to this place. That is what this whole development has been seen through different years. Different people have worked a lot, and they have come up with the good programming solutions. They tried to remove the problems with the AI systems, and they came to different good solutions rather. So if we see, like in 1997, IBM's Deep Blue beat the world chess champion Garry Kasparov. So this was the time again when the people started investing in this AI field. As you can now, you can see the chatbots, you can see the Google search engine, you can see IBM's Watson, which are supporting the people to develop the AI systems. You can develop your own chatbots by using the IBM Watsons. Like suppose if you are working in education, you can develop your own question answering chatbots for your students, and it's a very easy. Now you don't have to write even codes. Only you should have the knowledge of your problem domain if you really want to work in this. So in 2014, like Google makes the first self-driving car to pass a state driving test, and then Google's DeepMind's AlphaGo defeat the world champion Go player Lee Sedol. So these were again the very good developments in this AI field. How it works, this AI system works, it actually replicates or simulates the human intelligence in machines. AI is a computer system able to perform some tasks that ordinarily every human being can do very easily. But if those work can be done by a machine, then we say that it is artificially intelligent machine.